It's New Year's Eve on December 31st of 1999. In a few minutes, the calendar will be displaying January 1st of the year 2000. Instead of excitement for the new year and new aspirations, the air is full of tension and suspense. Watching the clock, the minute hand is slowly about to cross over to midnight. You feel a sudden urge to hide or go to a storm shelter. You feel like the last few weeks of news reports are just replaying in your head. You think, will computers be taking over? Will I be able to access my bank accounts on January 1st? Will this mean that planes will be falling out of the sky? Am I even going to have power? The countdown begins. It's time. Time for us to finally uncover the truth about the cyber events that occurred on Y2K. Hi, and welcome Cyber Defenders. My name is Reanna Schultz, and I'll be your aide today as I guide you through different learning opportunities within CyberSpeak Labs. Before we begin today's lab assignment, I personally want to thank you all for supporting the podcast. Your support through following, sharing, and rating the show has given our listener platform a huge growth on a global level. I'm talking about the United States all the way to the United Kingdom, and with the rise of our listeners from Egypt and India. Because of you all, we're exploring new areas to provide support and education to the community in 2025. Now, if you're new to the show, welcome. We aim to build a collaborative community to learn more about cybersecurity, which is what we're doing today. With it being the new year, I want us to open our research books and uncover the real events that happened during Y2K. We will look closely into sophisticated attacks and events that were the turning point for cyber practitioners, including deep diving into a virus that literally changed how the FBI does cybersecurity today. Now, let's put on our white coats to enter the lab to collaborate and to learn. If you are not familiar with what Y2K stands for, the Y represents the year, where K is the kilo, which is a unit of 1000. Thus, Y2K was abbreviated to celebrate the year 2000. But unlike today's world, where you could spend $5 and have a terabyte of cloud storage, computer storage and data handling was very expensive in the 50s through 80s. It was common that 1 bit would cost $1, and my iPhone alone would be costing way more than just $20 of storage for photos. Don't even get me started about my mobile app games. That's a different topic, different day. Now, for programmers and engineers to provide cost-effective solutions, they made a minor adjustment to the code to prevent large amounts of memory being used. One solution was adjusting how the year was saved by the computer programs. Instead of a 4-digit numbered year, this was modified to be a 2-digit numbered year, with the 2 digits being the last 2 numbers of the year. So for example, 1998 was saved as 98. However, in the year of 1958, a computer scientist named Bob Beamer identified this type of logic could lead to serious data corruption and financial loss by the time the year 2000 arrived. This was because this programming logic did not allow computers to know the difference from the year 2000 and the year 1900. Programs relied heavily on dates for their infrastructure to function. This could have led to it being completely corrupted or even just crashing the program itself. So Bob took it upon himself that for the next few decades, he spent his time raising awareness about this huge programming flaw. He became well known for attempting to spread awareness to those working in IBM or even government sectors of the United States. As awareness campaigns regarding this bug started to heighten, the scope of global impact began to spread. And according to an article on National Geographic, the Y2K bug threatened many centers of technology, such as power plants, ground and air transportation, and even medical devices, like when a birth certificate's being printed. Honestly, it would be pretty cool that your first day of birth you would be 100 years old, but hey, I guess that is not technically correct. So, of course, a global wide scare like this would not be complete without adding apocalyptic threats or even media infected conspiracy theories, which low key is one of my guilty pleasures. Eventually, the Y2K bug turned bad programming awareness into awareness for end of the world. I'm not even kidding. Some of the rumors I read online and through Reddit with what people thought was going to happen, it made me audibly laugh. But as a reminder, this is why cyber education is very, very important. So that way people can have educated insight and make decisions that are educated based or even data driven. Now, I really wanted to share, even though this has nothing to do with cyber, I did want to share some of my favorite theories that I came across through these different platforms. And I don't know, if you have a Y2K story, if you were around that time, or if maybe your parents or friends or whoever, and they had a theory, please comment below. I really want to know because this just fascinated me for some reason. So anyways, here are my top 3 theories that I read. The first one was people thought because the computers were going to fail, prison doors would fly open, allowing all of the violent criminals to be released, go into the public, and basically have a Y2K version of the Purge. Now, to add to this theory, people believed that if the Y2K bug would not get fixed, then nobody would be able to get a hold of their local emergency phone services, such as 911. So essentially, you would have all of these criminals running around doing criminal things, and nobody could call 911 to save the day or report an emergency. So that was theory number 1. Theory number 2, which I also found interesting, was that people were afraid of satellites and planes falling out of the sky and basically destroying cities. Now, I don't have a background in space or aircrafts, but last I checked, items floating in space don't just magically get gravity and crash into the nearest planet, let alone a specific type of city. Now, with aircrafts, I'm not sure how they were designed in the 90s, but some airlines did want to test this theory. One of these airlines was American Airlines. They had tested a flight where pilots set the clocks ahead to the year 2000 to see if anything would happen. Thankfully, nothing did happen from this. The pilots landed the plane safely, and this debunked a lot of theories and fears in society once American Airlines had publicly disclosed this. Now, this last theory, which is my absolute favorite, by the way, is, I don't know, maybe there's something about a global apocalypse and a spreading virus that get people crazy about toilet paper, but this one is my favorite theory because of toilet paper. And I do want to have a small background story. If you don't know this about me, here's a fun fact. I used to be part of the Girl Scouts of America. I was in it for 2 years. I am not an outdoorsy person, which I guess working on computers now as my day job works best for me. But I remember being in Girl Scouts, and we would go camping, or we would do outdoor activities, and we always joked that we would run out of toilet paper. And there was a girl that's like, why is that an issue? We can just use the leaves on the trees. And I'm thinking, well, I guess that makes sense, you know? But again, it was a joke. We were kids, and I'm talking about like 8 or 10. And obviously, that's an extreme case for running out of toilet paper or not having any of those, I would say, household essentials. But this theory about toilet paper came into play because people were super hyper focused on banks being so heavily relied on computers that society started to think that the banks would not be able to provide money or even receive paychecks, and people couldn't even go to ATMs to pull out cash. So naturally, this fear escalated to people promoting things such as make sure you have household essentials, etc. So while people still had access to money in their bank accounts, they started to stockpile on household essentials. Yes, just like COVID-19, The toilet paper flew off of the shelves at the supermarket and was super hard to find leading up to the Y2K event. So people were concerned that household essentials like toilet paper would become the new currency due to the possibility of banks and ATMs not being accessible. Like, this just blows my mind. Imagine rolling up, we had Y2K, the computers all failed because they couldn't read the year 2000, and I am really craving Starbucks or McDonald's, and I drive up to the drive-thru and I'm like, yeah, I want a cheeseburger off of the 1 square piece menu. Or like, even if you're at a restaurant and you're tipping your server in Q-tips and cotton balls, that is like, I started laughing thinking about that. But then I really thought about the game Fallout, and I'm not sure how many of the listeners are fans of the Fallout game, but there is some truth about using bottle caps for currency during a end of the world event. And now I understand that. So with this being said, the 90s were a very iconic time in our history books. But because of these conspiracy theories, because of all of this going on, this allowed awareness to continue to rise about the Y2K bug, whether some of it was true or not. By the 1980s, many tech-centered businesses, such as the New York Stock's trade market, implemented solutions that were over $20 million US. And they did this by hiring 100 computer programmers to update the system code and memories of these different infrastructure systems. And I did not believe this number. I fact-checked myself and went to Wikipedia. And I know some people are like, no, you can't rely on Wikipedia. There was a couple of news articles. The New York stock trade market hired 100 computer programmers to make sure the stock trade market was up by the year 1000. So some companies just went ahead and spent more money on storage to update the code to be a 3 or 4 digit year number instead of just the 2. Now, other companies also implemented more cost efficient approaches, and they did this by creating a process called windowing. Now, this process involves doing some math and comparing dates in a 100-year range window for those years. So essentially, they would just go through the years all over again and then just do the math within the 100-year range window to get the exact year that they needed. Now, this allowed companies to not rewrite code for an entire infrastructure, but they were able to make small fixes. And of course, as newer systems and hardware was introduced, these legacy systems eventually became outdated and were most likely replaced with today's computing technology. Eventually, individual countries began to build internal task force. The United States even published a website called Y2K.gov to provide outreach and awareness of remediation for this bug. And I will say, I tried visiting this website and I was very sad to see that it no longer exists. But, news for you all, I was able to find the last snapshot of this website on web archives of it being on September 15th of 2004. And let me tell you, it looked like my first HTML program I had ever coded. It was amazing, but it was a very nice website for 2004, I will say. Eventually, in 1998, over 120 countries met for the first time to coordinate their first global meeting of the National Y2K Coordinators of the United Nations. They had 6 strategic initiatives, which honestly, I'm not going to read because it is a lot of government and corporate jargon, but high level, they align to provide action, response, facilitation, or remediate the Y2K programming bug. Now, in March of 2000, the international Y2K coordinators had officially shut down. So what was the impact of the bug, right? We talked about the different conspiracy theories. We talked about how people started implementing changes, the coordination of the international Y2K coordinators. Well, the impact itself is not as bad as some people theorized or wanted to believe. In fact, most of the world was able to use public transportation and access their banks on January 1st of 2000. But at a worldwide scale, it had cost a total of $545 billion US in today's currency, which might sound crazy expensive, but it is in history as one of the most international financial remediations caused by a computer program, which, in my opinion, is probably the turning point for secure programming, especially at something at this big of a stage. And if you're curious about a full list of impacts from the Y2K bug, Wikipedia, of course, has a whole list of each country and reported issues. Now, some of the most notable issues I saw was in Egypt, where a dialysis machine briefly failed. Now, in South Korea, some people received medical bills from the year of 1900. All in all, this event truly made an exciting year, and it was also used for future pop culture comedy TV shows such as The Simpsons and Family Guys. And again, like I said, a small little bug in a program led to a whole potential international infrastructure outage. And looking at this now in the year 2025, there are still times, not at this scale, where we do have these wide outages because of a bad program or even because of a bad security update. One of the most recent events that this was compared to was the 2024 CrowdStrike outage. So this just shows that events from even in 1999 going into the new year still can be reflective in lessons learned at a different technology scale that we have in today's world. So now, cyber defenders, even though this was our first true lab assignment in 2025, we have one more event to cover. And I really want to highlight the fact of New Year's resolutions or reflecting on previous years to bring into the new year as a theme for this podcast. So our next lab assignment is really going to focus on the then to the now. And before we go on a break, I do want to say some of our lab researchers and listeners have suggested a specific genre for our small tiny break that we have here. So I hope you all can find some time, think about your New Year's goals or what you really want to accomplish in 2025. So enjoy these earworm beats, and I will see you back in the lab again soon. Bye. All right, welcome back to the lab, Cyber Defenders. I hope you had a refreshing break. I also want to hear from you guys as well as to what you want to accomplish in 2025. I always like to promote the CyberSpeak Labs Discord channel. You can find this Discord channel by visiting cyberspeaklabs.com and join our community. We like to celebrate each other's wins. We also talk about cybersecurity news, events, and certifications, and overall, it's just a really good collaborative group as well. And if you are curious about our podcast a little bit, a lot of the research done for this podcast is by community contributors that are also part of that Discord channel. One of the awesome features about this lab is the involvement from the community and their hard work. I had a lot of awesome submissions and volunteer reach outs for our Y2K episode, and it was so hard to pick a topic. Especially when you put together the show, you want to make sure content flows together, and there's just a lot of behind the scenes work to make sure you guys have a quality episode you can listen to in the car or at work or in the grocery store. I don't know where you listen to podcasts, but again, I had a lot of awesome submissions. So thank you for you guys for doing that. And if you do want to be a community researcher, feel free to reach out again through that CyberSpeak Labs website, which I will put in the description for you all. And I did want to tie together two concepts that were submitted for this episode. And I want to talk about phishing and also a very, very delightful virus called the Melissa virus. And you might be asking, Reanna, is the Melissa virus part of a phishing campaign? Well, if I told you, that would ruin the magic and suspense of our lab assignment. So you'll have to wait. But I do like to take the time to highlight some valuable content our community researchers did find that I thought was very interesting, especially with it being related to the new year. And if you're not from the United States, every year there is a huge party, or parties, I should say, hosted in New York City. These events are very popular, and oftentimes they're captured on the news or through high-paid celebrities and social media influencers, and sometimes they'll do live countdowns or performances and stuff like that. Of course, events like this can also be used not just for good, but a way for threat actors to utilize the high visible events that are happening around the new year. In 2024, an online newsletter called The Sun actually did a report on this. They interviewed about how a man received an email promising VIP tickets to, and I quote, biggest New Year's Eve party in Times Square for only $50 US. With it being such a great deal, the man allegedly claims that he clicked the Pay Now link, where he had to submit his bank information, and by end of the night his account was drained, and not because he wasted it having fun that night. And this is important to highlight the potential phishing and social engineering tactics that were used for big events like the New York City New Year's Eve party, or even links to live countdowns where cyber criminals were impersonating influencers during these high media events, with the goal to either obtain account information for social media or gather banking information. These tactics really emphasize the too good to be true, or lure their potential online victim with, I would say, enticing offers or information. But with social engineering being a rise, especially with today's AI world where images or even sounds look real, the year 1999 was just as terrifying. But not because of the Y2K bug. There was also another event happening while the fear of the Y2K into the world propaganda was happening. Now, 1999 into the 2000s, and I will say this again, was an iconic moment in our tech history books. I always think there is a level of appreciation reading about how threats and data exfiltration is done today compared to how it was done when computers were starting to become popular in small home offices or corporate environments, which started around the 80s and 90s and then really became the fad in the 2000s. So there is a theme with this virus with social engineering tactics. Just like the New Year's Eve phishing and social engineering attacks, this virus focused on a specific type of audience. And I will say, this audience was very focused on adult content themes or interests. And that is as G-rated as I'm going to make that sound, so do what you want with that sentence. Again, this assignment is used for us to learn about education and the evolution of social engineering and security safety. So if you want more extensive lists of what this virus targeted and how it appeared, I will warn you, it's graphic, so viewer discretion is advised if you decide to go look at this on your own time. Now, with this research, it mostly focuses on details outlined in the court case itself, which is public through briefs and also through different types of articles written through the FBI. Which, in my opinion, the FBI did post enough write-ups about this virus and made the research really fun to read, especially when they hit their anniversary with this case. They appear to do like a social media post about it here and there, which again is also super fun to read. So now, according to the article published by the New York Times in April of 1999, the headlines for this article had read, investigators in New Jersey arrested a 30-year-old software programmer. This programmer went by the name of David Lee Smith. I tried looking up some information about David Lee Smith, maybe what his background was, what they're doing now, what happened after this. I cannot find anything on the internet about this guy. And David Smith is a very popular and common name apparently in the United States. So again, it's just hard to find what happened before and after this event. Now, what I can tell you, FBI investigators had discovered David to compromise more than 300 corporations and 1 million email accounts all within 5 days, thus making this one of the most fast and impactful computer viruses to exist in history, next to the first documented worm, which was the Morse worm. So the real question is, how was it done? Well, even though threats have evolved, it is clear from how this threat was conducted, it's very similar to social engineering tactics that we see in today's scams and also different types of emergent AI threats. Victims would receive an email that is titled with important messages from, which was then followed by the username that was saved in the email header. So when a user would open a message, the email contents were, well, let's just say they were enticing. For example, one of the email bodies read was, "Here's that document you asked for. Don't show anyone else. Winky face," with an attached Word document. Personally, if I got this email, even if it was someone I knew, I would not be opening it. I would be like, nope, don't want it. Absolutely not. No, thank you. Anyways, when David Lee Smith had created this virus, there was a few things that were very intriguing about this event that caught my eye. The first one was he had utilized a hijacked AOL account. He then used this AOL account to post the virus on internet news groups that fit the category he was targeting at, which eventually ended up in similar groups and then spreading into corporate networks. It was just a mess. Now, the reason this virus was named the Melissa virus, it was very interesting. David had named the virus because he had perceived and masqueraded as an adult entertainer. Again, do what you want with that imagery. If you do research it, again, I'm going to say user discretion is advised on where this was posted, but where the virus would lure its computer victims into interacting it through enticing messages or even just general user curiosity. And according to numerous security articles, the Word document that was part of the original email contained the beginning steps of the attack chain for this virus. A Visual Basic script was embedded in this document so that when a user had opened up this Word document, that Visual Basic script would then allow itself to read the computer storage and then kick off a process where it would read the first 50 contacts in an Outlook client. Essentially, the virus did not need Outlook to function, but it needed the client to spread itself to more infrastructure. Because of how the virus itself collected contacts and then emailed further out those contacts with it, self-copied, pasted itself into that Word document, the virus had caused over 1 million email accounts to be hijacked and had reported a cost over $8 million in damages, which in today's economy and inflation, it's about $149 million, which is insane. A lot of people have complained about businesses having slow email or even crash reports. The list just goes on from the different FBI reports. Eventually, on April 1st of 1999, David Smith was arrested in New Jersey due to a tip to the FBI police. Now, on December 10th of 1999, David had pleaded guilty to second-degree charge of computer theft and federal charges of damaging a computer program due to releasing the virus. And later down on May 1st of 2002, David was sentenced to 20 months of federal prison and was fined $5,000. And all of this information was part of that public court case and a lot of the different FBI briefings. Now, even though this specific event had went to trial, there was a whole investigation, there was a whole court case, there was even federal charges implemented against this person, there were some good to come out of this event. One of them was leading into the new year and a few years past that, the FBI had opened and was able to create a nation cyber division where they had focused on online cyber crimes. Additionally, since this event was so widespread, this became an example of importance of social engineering tactics and phishing emails to a lot of different users, especially those who were impacted. This had been a eye-wide opening experience for them. And events like this and the New Year's Eve scams, these are great examples as to why it's important to remember the different types of social engineering tactics. Things such as general user curiosity, all the way up to maybe it's too good to be true, followed by don't open emails that you are not expecting. Again, these are things that happened in 1999 following the new year, with some very cool different types of viruses that emerged from this threat, which we are not going to go into for this podcast episode, but it's still really cool to see the evolution of things that happened in 1999 with the Y2K bug, the Melissa virus, and then how things have transformed into today's world, essentially between different secure programming practices and then also the security awareness side, and of course the FBI's Nation Cyber Division as well. So as always, cyber defenders, if you decide to do your own research on these events that we have discussed through today's assignment, viewer discretion is advised. Additionally, I always like to remind the listeners and visitors of our lab that the lab is designed for us to collaborate and to learn. And before you decide to do your own research, investigations, or home lab, I recommend ensuring you're aligning to your local and state governing laws about cyber ethics and regulations. And to ensure our lab is continuing to grow, I encourage you all to like, subscribe, and rate the podcast. Because of your support, we're able to bring more contributions and future exciting releases that are in the works right now. Lastly, I'm going to give a huge shout out to Umar Mayer for helping with this research for this podcast. If you do not follow Umar, I recommend checking out his social links on cyberspeaklabs.com or find him through LinkedIn. He is super passionate about cybersecurity and provides a lot of knowledge and background and different certifications, and just honestly is an overall great person to network with. So again, thank you all for joining me in the lab, and I look forward to collaborating with you all again soon. See ya, guys!